today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Ahead of his inauguration, Trump vows harsh immigration limits on his first day in office. His presidential inauguration, by the way, represents a preview of his foreign policy approach. As in a break from tradition, several foreign politicians and heads of state are on the guest list, including right-wing populist leaders Javier Milei of Argentina and Italy's Giorgia Meloni. A temporary truce to end 15 months of fighting in Gaza began on Sunday with the release of 3 Israeli hostages held by Hamas. The Israeli military also began withdrawing from several locations in the enclave, while some displaced Palestinians also started returning home. TikTok came back online in the United States on Sunday, having shut down for just 14 hours as the national ban took effect. Hours after South Korea's impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol was formally arrested, triggering rioting by his supporters, his lawyers have said that he remains defiant in his refusal to answer questions over the probe into his declaration of martial law last month. Over 80 people have been killed in violence in Colombia. The clashes involve rebels and rival groups. Well, as Donald Trump prepares for his second presidential inauguration, the event is shaping up to be a bold preview of his foreign policy. In fact, in a break from tradition, a host of foreign leaders, including right-wing populists like Argentina's Javier Milei and Italy's Giorgia Meloni, will be in attendance. And this international guest list signals a significant shift away from the defiance that marked his first term and towards a growing global deference, as many analysts point out. But what does this mean for the future of global diplomacy under Trump's leadership? Well, here's our report on what to expect, followed by my colleague Kate Fisher's report from Washington, D.C.
President-elect Donald Trump is all set to be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States in a historic ceremony at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. The event will feature a star-studded lineup including celebrities, foreign dignitaries, and tech titans, marking the beginning of Trump's second term in office. So, what can we expect from this momentous event? For one, Mother Nature is throwing a curveball. The ceremony will now take place indoors due to a bone-chilling cold front sweeping through the Capitol. Instead of the usual outdoor setting, the president's inaugural address, along with other key speeches, will be delivered from the iconic rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. The inaugural parade will be held indoors at Washington's Capital One Arena. A global lineup of leaders is set to grace the inauguration, with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Argentinian President Javier Milei, and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban among the prominent figures expected to attend. Chinese President Xi Jinping will not attend the ceremony, but is instead sending the Vice President as a special envoy. India will be represented by External Affairs Minister S.J. Shankar, while Japan's Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya has also confirmed his participation. All living former U.S. presidents will be present with their spouses, continuing a long-standing tradition. However, former First Lady Michelle Obama has chosen to skip the event, offering no explanation for her absence. Both female candidates who lost the race to the White House to Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton in 2016 and Kamala Harris last November, will be present. Some of the world's most influential business figures will be attending. Tesla CEO and staunch Trump supporter Elon Musk, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, and Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg are expected to be seated together. TikTok CEO Xiaozi Chu will join the high-profile guest list just as a nationwide TikTok ban takes effect. He's likely to sit alongside the tech mogul trio. Google CEO Sundar Pichai will also be making his way to the Capitol for the occasion. The ceremony will feature a lineup of iconic musical performances. Opera singer Christopher Machio will perform the national anthem. Country legend Lee Greenwood will bring the spirit of patriotism alive with God Bless the USA. And Carrie Underwood will sing America the Beautiful. With protests expected, thousands of federal agents, police, and other law enforcement will be on hand. President-elect Trump's inauguration is set to be a defining moment. As the world watches, the ceremony marks the start of a second term for Trump, setting the stage for what's to come in American politics. Samia Afsar, NDTV World.
The weather may be freezing in Washington, but President-elect Trump is fired up. He said that he's preparing more than 100 executive orders for his first day in office in a show of force that will set the tone for the next 4 years. Many are likely to reflect his pledges to bolster immigration enforcement and improve border security. And in major metropolitan areas, immigration raids could begin almost immediately as he follows through on campaign promises to deport undocumented migrants. And those jailed for their part in the January 6th attack on the US Capitol will be awaiting word of potential pardons from the new president. And world leaders will be watching to see if he begins executing his plans for tariffs, land grabs, and ending wars. His inauguration ceremony will begin at 12 p.m. local time, but instead of the traditional ceremony on the steps of the US Capitol, it will take place inside the Capitol building because of these cold temperatures here in Washington. The guests include some of the richest and most powerful people in the world. Every living former president is set to witness Donald Trump's return to power. But some prominent Democrats, including former First Lady Michelle Obama and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, are opting out. 3 of the world's wealthiest men will be there. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos are expected to be among the major tech executives there, along with the chief executive of the imperiled social media app TikTok. President-elect Trump invited Chinese President Xi Jinping, but the country's vice president will attend on his behalf. Several world leaders who share Mr. Trump's ideology may also be there, including Argentina's right-wing populist president Javier Milei and Italy's Giorgia Meloni. Representatives from key US allies in the Asia-Pacific region will also be attending, including the foreign ministers of India, Australia, and Japan. From punitive trade tariffs to mass deportations and ending wars, Donald Trump has promised a lot for his second term, and in a few hours, we'll know just how much of this is set to happen on day one. Kate Fisher, NDTV, Washington.
And Ray Locker is also with us for further clarity. As always, Ray, thanks so much for making time for us. Do you agree with the statement that ahead of his second term, much of the world is actually bowing down to the incoming US president?
I wouldn't say bowing down, but they're far more accommodating than they were 8 years ago. I mean, 8 years ago, Trump won the election through the Electoral College, but lost the popular vote by almost 3 million votes. So many people saw that as a fluke. This time around, there's no denying he got the most votes in the 2024 election. He won the Electoral College, so he should be duly elected and duly sworn in as the president tomorrow. And so there are some people who are apprehensive about what he will do because during his first term, he threatened many companies like Amazon, like Meta/Facebook, said that they were unfair to him and other conservatives. So there's a degree of trepidation that people have. And they're hoping to mitigate that by giving money to his inauguration fundraising campaign and by appearing with him tomorrow.
But Ray, you think this time around, foreign leaders are also more accustomed to Trump's transactional nature? In fact, some diplomats are saying that as far as the invite is concerned, no one's going to laugh this off because they all need things from Trump.
Well, the United States is still the dominant country in the world, and he is the incoming president of the United States. So you ignore him and the United States at your peril if you're a leader of another country. You have to deal with us. I mean, you might not like it, but you have to. And so I think people saw what happened when he was president the last time. They know what his sweet spots are, they know how to get things from him, they know he likes to be flattered. And so they'll do that again. I mean, you look at India and Narendra Modi, that's what he did during the first Trump presidency, and I think we'll see it again.
But Ray, just on that note then, do you believe this transactional diplomacy is a sustainable long-term strategy, or does it actually risk creating unstable international relationships, especially based on short-term gains?
Well, I think it's a bad thing. I mean, you know that you can buy off Trump. You know that you can get to him in certain ways. I mean, you saw that in his first term. He owned a hotel right down the street from the White House. Foreign leaders would stay at his hotel. They would have events there. They could get to him there, and they got what they wanted. And that's an ethical nightmare. And people who like Trump don't care, may not like to hear people say that, but it's true. And it diminishes the presidency.
Ray, as always, thanks so much for making time for us and joining us on NDTV. Always a pleasure to hear your views.
My pleasure.
The other crucial story we're tracking, a temporary ceasefire to end 15 months of fighting in Gaza began on Sunday, marked by the release of 3 Israeli hostages held by Hamas. The Israeli military also started pulling back from key positions in the region, while some displaced Palestinians began returning home. However, this initial phase of the truce is expected to be tense. As many analysts and senior journalists are arguing, the situation is fraught with challenges, with 3 far-right Israeli cabinet members resigning over the deal and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu facing pressure from hardliners to actually resume the war. Meanwhile, Hamas has framed the ceasefire as a victory. Some have warned that the deep-rooted hatred between Israeli and Palestinians has only intensified, suggesting a complex and uncertain future ahead.
Romi Gonen, who turned 24 in captivity. Romi was dancing with friends at the Nova Music Festival when Hamas terrorists invaded and attacked the festival, massacring and abducting young people from around the world who were celebrating peace, love, and unity. Emily Damari, who turned 28 in captivity. Emily, a dual Israeli and British citizen, was abducted by Hamas from her quiet home in Kibbutz Kfar Aza. Terrorists shot and killed her dog and dragged her into Gaza. And Doron Steinbacher, who turned 31 in captivity. Doron, a veterinary nurse who brutally abducted from her home in Kibbutz Kfar Aza, was still in her pajamas.
Vishal Vivek has been tracking the finer details for us. He joins us live at the moment. Vishal, given the resignation of these 3 far-right Israeli cabinet members and the pressure on Netanyahu to restart the war, how likely is it that this ceasefire will actually hold? What are analysts saying about the key factors that could influence the stability? What are we picking up on?
So as far as the ceasefire is concerned, it's divided into 3 phases. We are so far into the first phase. The first day is over. And as you know, it just in the 3 hours that the ceasefire was delayed, Israel continued to bomb Gaza. So that shows you the scale of the operation that Israel has in Gaza. And as far as the phase 2 is concerned, it remains to be seen because far-right ministers, as you mentioned, have resigned. But there are some ministers that have stuck on. They want to continue, and they have said that they would resign only if Israel proceeds with the phase 2 of the ceasefire deal. So phase 2 will also have 42 days, and if Israel continues that ceasefire in those 42 days, some ministers are expected to resign again. So that could mean the fall of Netanyahu government, and Netanyahu wouldn't want that. So far, he had delayed the ceasefire deal based on that only. These are reports saying. So we'll have to see what happens after 42 days. So far, the ceasefire deal remains steady. It remains to be going on, and what remains to be seen is that how these ministers respond after 6 weeks. That's when the main action would happen, and the permanency of the ceasefire could be hampered.
As always, Vishal, thanks so much for breaking down the details for us. Well, let's turn our attention now to the TikTok ban in the United States. Well, TikTok came back online in the US on Sunday, having shut down for just 14 hours as a national ban took effect. But the reversal came after Donald Trump said he will delay the embargo with an executive order following his inauguration, which TikTok CEO is attending. Several US lawmakers signaled they would push for the ban to be enforced, however, but the Chinese-owned app's long-term future remains unclear as we speak. It could be sold to an American owner. Trump floated a US government-backed joint venture, or perhaps the US law will be a blueprint for other countries to pursue their own bans. There's also another path that The Atlantic argued. Americans could simply move on, as many have already begun to, and the app will join MySpace and Vine in social media that was. In fact, for further clarity, we have with us a tech lawyer from the United States, Mishi Chaudhry. Thanks so much for making time for us on NDTV. Mishi, how do these latest developments signal the growing influence of executive orders over digital policy? And what does it actually mean for future tech regulation?
So the current president-elect, who's incoming tomorrow, has said that he will be able to pass an executive order. Through the executive order, he can give an extension for 90 days, but he cannot overturn the law itself. However, those 90 days extension, which he says perhaps would give a chance to find a different alternative, where he's saying he would prefer a 50% joint venture with an American company, that does change the equation quite a bit. And to remind everyone, the entire TikTok saga and rigmarole started with President Trump in his first term itself. So for future of tech policy, there is going to be a lot which will be done through the executive. Why is because obviously we are seeing the world's richest person has had an oversized influence on the president-elect. He has spent all his time since the elections here at Mar-a-Lago. He's going to be part of the government. We are also seeing a lot of tech CEOs trying to embrace a very different political shift. We've seen different statements as well as board changes plus policy changes coming out of Meta. We're also watching as Google and Amazon change not only their company's practices, but CEOs' other interests, like Jeff Bezos' interest in Washington Post, and all of these are also having impact. So we will see far more stuff coming out of the White House. However, in terms of turning that into law, that obviously will still stay with Congress.
Well, Mishi, thanks so much for joining us on NDTV. In fact, as far as the proposed US-backed joint venture for TikTok is concerned, many question whether this model will actually address national security concerns by keeping the app operational, or would it just be a temporary fix? But we'll keep getting you the latest as far as this is concerned. For now, we're slipping into a very short break. Do stay tuned. We're back in a moment.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
we move on to the next category, which is the Youth Icon of the Year. And for this, मैं एक बार फिर से request करूँगी आशा पारेख जी का स्टेज पर आने के लिए, और साथ ही इनवाइट करेंगे मयंक अग्रवाल जी को, CEO Gallant Group of Industries, to join us on stage for this next category of awards.
Ananya Pandey.
Congratulations, Ananya. And Ananya Pandey, actor, is getting this award for her advocacy work on combating cyberbullying, growing achievements in the film industry, and strong influence on social media. And that's what makes Ananya Pandey NDTV Youth Icon of the Year 2024. She represents a blend of modern values, relatability, and a commitment to meaningful causes, which are essential qualities for inspiring today's youth.
Congratulations, very many
Thank
congratulations.
you. Thank
And
you.
Ananya, there are just a few questions for
Yes.
you. You've, diverse characters, and you've made a shift from big screen to OTT. Big superstars have done their shift. What is your opinion on that, and what's your next move?
Firstly, I just want to thank NDTV for this award. It's truly very, very humbling, and to get it from Asha Parekh ji, I'm such a big fan of your work, so this is a pinch me moment for sure. I don't believe any screen is too big or small. It's a screen at the end of the day, and the world is developing so fast. There's so many changes that are being made, so I think we're all just keeping up with the times.
Ananya, the fact is that 2024, this year has been phenomenal for you. One success after another. Kahan Kho Gaye Hum, Call Me Bae, CTRL. How does it feel to have multiple successes in one single year?
It's really a dream come true. I really think this year for me, more than ever, I felt very connected to my fans with Kho Gaye Hum Kahan and Call Me Bae and Control. I've done movies in the past, but this is the first time that I felt true love from the audience. And, all these films and shows have been conversation starters. People have not just come up to me and said that they like my work, but how my work has kind of made them feel seen or represented on screen. And for an actor, I think that's a huge victory for me.
So Asha ji is here on stage, and I sometimes back मैंने आपसे ये पूछा था कि आज के दौर में स्टारडम कैसे हैंडल करना है, तो अनन्या आपके साथ हैं जो स्टारडम को एक अलग तरीके से हैंडल कर रही हैं. कुछ एडवाइस अनन्या के लिए, या अनन्या आपको आशा जी से कुछ पूछना है?
जी, आप प्लीज बताइए, आप मुझे एडवाइस दीजिए, प्लीज.
क्या बताऊं?
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
Let's get you the latest from South Korea. Well, chaos erupted as hundreds of supporters of impeached President Yoon Suk Yeol stormed a court building after he was arrested. In fact, they're calling it his detention that it was extended. Protesters overwhelmed riot police, smashed windows, trashed court offices early on Sunday morning, and Yoon was actually arrested on Wednesday for declaring martial law on the 3rd of December. He is accused of insurrection. The acting leader has condemned the violence as unimaginable, and police have arrested 46 people and reported minor injuries while vowing to track down more suspects. But President Yoon has called on his supporters to remain peaceful as the country grapples with political turmoil since the past fortnight. Let's turn our attention now to Colombia, where more than 80 people have been killed and 20 others injured in escalating violence involving the National Liberation Army in the country's northeast. Thousands of residents are actually fleeing this region, seeking safety in government shelters or hiding in nearby mountains. But the violence follows the Colombian government's suspension of peace talks with the ELN, accusing the group of war crimes. You must note that fighting has intensified between the ELN, former FARC dissidents, and the Clan de Golfo cartel, with armed groups battling for control of lucrative coca plantations near the Venezuelan border. Defense Minister Ivan Velasquez is set to visit the region as the government prepares to send aid for thousands of displaced people by this conflict. Meanwhile, President Gustavo Petro's plan for total peace faces mounting challenges amid this ongoing unrest. News and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Thank you so much for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
Joining us today is somebody whose journey in Indian cinema is almost parallel to independent India's journey. Almost 7-8 decades that she has acted, directed, censored Indian cinema. She has been a vital part, a vital cog of India's journey through all these 7-8 decades. Asha Parekh, welcome to NDTV.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Asha ji, you were part of the golden era of Indian cinema, worked with the best filmmakers, iconic actors. How do you look at your own journey?
Well, it's been a very long journey, and I enjoyed being where I was, and